Yo guys, what is going on? Welcome back to another video, and today we are here with the case for and against drafting an offensive lineman in round 1 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Now, as you guys know, in my last video, I drafted an offensive lineman in the first round, and I know either way some fans are torn between drafting one and not drafting one, and we are gonna be covering both cases today, as the Miami Dolphins do have several needs to address in the draft, and that does include the offensive line. So the offensive line is among the most popular positions mocked to the Miami Dolphins with this 13th overall pick in the 2025 draft. And it's not even hard to see why, because the team's line has been a huge weakness for the last few seasons, and especially last season, and it's possibly losing its best pass protector, left tackle Teron Armstead, and the still needs one more starting guard. And we know that right now Armstead is, projected to return, and sounds like he's coming back, and Miami has already invested in the offensive line in the offseason. James Daniels is expected to be a one guard spot, and we could be seeing Borum and Eichenberg competing for the other one, in which so far I believe Borum is the better fit than Eichenberg is. And while it makes sense for the Dolphins to invest another pick in the O-line, spending their top pick on one isn't as straightforward as it would seem, and I decided to break down the pros and cons of the Dolphins using their first round pick of an offensive lineman. And yes, I did pick one in the first round because honestly, I do feel like it is a bigger need than people realize. And the obvious starting point for the argument for going to select a running back, I'm not a running back, the argument to select an offensive lineman in round 1, it starts with that the Dolphins are still missing a guard. As mentioned above, Eichenberg and Borum could compete for that spot, but neither player is considered a solid starter. We know Eichenberg struggled mightily. He knows the scheme, but his lack of balance and strength makes him a liability if he's forced to play many snaps. Borum is much stronger and a better athlete, but just didn't perform well with the Bears. There's also potential holes at the teams of the positions. Daniels is coming off a torn Achilles. Might not be ready for the start of the season, but I'm not worried about him in particular. Same could be said about Austin Jackson, who had a left knee surgery to end the year. And I think he's also going to be fine. And Paul, we know, had an up and down rookie season. He played well enough to believe he's got the ability to be a viable starter. But I personally see him more as depth, if anything. And that leaves Aaron Brewer as the only player on the Dolphins' projected starting lineup with a proven track record of strong play and no concerning injury reason. And now moving past personnel reasons, the Dolphins really struggled to run the ball after Jackson's injury last season. They lacked a powerful presence up front, and adding a first-round offensive lineman could really go a long way to bringing this run game back to what it was in 2023-24. And it should also be noted that quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is an incredibly injury-prone player. And if they plan to grow with him for the rest of his career, although his injuries from last season were on plays where he scrambled past the line of scrimmage, keeping him upright has to be a top priority for the Dolphins. And I'm actually on this side to pick an offensive lineman in round 1, but let's take a look at the cons, because obviously there's cons to this. And, you can poke up holes in the many offensive Dolphins starting options up front. There is an argument that the team is already comfortable with its 4 starters. If healthy for most of the season, Jackson, Paul, Brewer, Daniels, Paul/Armstead make up 4/5 of a solid offensive line. That is especially true for an offensive line system that gets the ball out quicker than any other team. That means the Dolphins could ideally be selecting a guard with the 13th overall pick. I actually have them picking the Dolphins. I actually have the Dolphins going after offensive tackle instead because I feel like Campbell is just so generational. Just keep that in mind, and that's why I think Tyler Booker is not very likely to be picked. So the Dolphins would have to pivot to select a college tackle, playing him at guard as a rookie and bouncing him back outside sometime in the future. While that is technically viable, it's not without its own set of challenges. Texas offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. is a popular name associated with this thought process, as well as Will Campbell Jr., which I think he's more realistic than Banks as it currently stands. And it's a lot to ask for any young player, and it adds a lot of risks with the Dolphins' first pick. That brings up to the big picture of the Dolphins roster. While the offensive lineman is in need, you could go in and still sign a starting caliber guard in free agency, and then you could address the position later in the draft. And so now the final verdict of all this, I am for taking an offensive lineman. The Dolphins taking an offensive lineman with the 13th overall pick is not a bad decision. Firmly investing in that unit would help this team this season and in the future. I did mention that in the video. In a perfect world, a player like Banks can play guard as a rookie and kick out to tackle down the line. Maybe in a more realistic world, you could see Campbell get drafted instead of Banks or Booker. Maybe it's not a bad strategy by any means. Might not be a slam dunk, but it's no bad strategy. So, that being said, Miami's roster is not in a position to throw a dart at an offensive lineman and hope that it hits with his first round pick. But given how things are projected to play out, it probably should be on their lower list of the first round. But nonetheless, Chris Greer and head coach McDaniel are under a lot of pressure to get back in the playoffs this season. And that's why I would honestly think you got to take a shot and take an offensive lineman. Keep Tua healthy. He needs to be healthy. It is critical. And if he goes down, you got to get Zach Wilson an offensive line so he can be healthy too. So that's why I would take an offensive lineman in the first round after all this. So with that being said, let me know you guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Really, really interested to see what you guys have to say about this. It's a good topic. It's really, really interesting to discuss. So yeah, that being said, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the video. Peace out.